Today we are talking about Lentor Garden Residences. So is your number one thinking when something that appear in Lentor this oversupply? If you are very familiar with Lentor or you've been following my channel for a while now, you know that in the entire Lentor area, there has been quite a few launches here. This Lentor Garden particularly is the 7th launch right now. And do you know that since 2022, until the last government land sales that has been recently sold, there are going to be a total of about just 4,000 units that are going to come in Lentor Estate, which is why today in my video, I'm actually going to address this issue together with you because there is just going to be more and more units coming up in the entire Lentor Estate. And the oversupply issue is just going to be one of the key things that we're going to touch on today. In fact, Kingsford is a new developer coming into the entire Lentor area. So how are they going to price their units in this development? That is why later part of this video, I'm going to touch on this as well. And based on their pricing strategy, I'm also going to cover what is going to be expected in terms of the pricing for Lentor Garden as well. Last but not least, if today you're buying into Lentor Garden, is rental something you are going to consider seriously? Are you going to buy this property as a form of rental investment? And if it is, does it make sense in my opinion or not? Last but not least, because in the Lentor area, this is the 7th launch, right? So we are also going to do floor plan comparison. How is it going to be like? Is yours going to be much better than the rest that has been launched before? Because there is going to be a lot of competitors here. Do make sure that even though this video is going to be a lengthy one, you do want to watch till the end of this video. In fact, there are chapters right below stated in the description box, and that is where you can fast forward to probably the topic that you are more interested in. So without further ado, I'm just going to touch on real quick about this project first. So Lentor Garden Residences is going to launch in July, which is very soon, right after the school holidays. And its expected TOP is in 2030. So of course, this is a 99-year leasehold property with 499 units. And one of the things that is better is what? At least over here, they have quite a substantial amount of car park lots, unlike the previous few launches that we have seen so far. And so before I touch on more and go into the real topic about addressing the oversupply issue, if you enjoy my content so far, would you take a moment to like and subscribe to my channel so that more people can benefit from my content? At the same time, I would like to invite you to join me on my Telegram channel because this is where I'll share with you the latest up-to-date news, and sometimes I'll also share info you will not be able to find online as well. If you require real estate advice, also can text me here at 81262727. So back to this topic, with just like about 4,000 units that is going to be appearing in the entire Lentor estate. Actually, is it going to be a problem for you or not? From start to finish since 2022, Lentor Modern was the first launch that appeared in the Lentor estate. But we have seen the profitable transactions for Lentor Modern that it has done really well. And in fact, it being the first development with more projects that were launching behind it, people start to be very used to the Lentor area. And which is why over in the next few years, subsequently, we have Lentor Mansion, Lentor Central. During the first day of launch, they actually did very well. So there is also another clear division over here. Last year, there was this announcement of the change in seller stamp duty. So what does it mean to you? Over here, I actually draw the map out for you. Actually, why is it interesting? Because I realized that actually Lentor Gardens is here, right? Over here, anything that's formed here is like the phase 1, like wave 1 of the Lentor area. It's just like when we look back on Lentor Modern, which was the first launch over here, it is actually the first project in Lentor. Subsequently, after that, actually Lentor Hills launch was 1 year later. And because of that 1 year gap, that is why in the resale market, Lentor Modern was able to command good profits because there is no resale competition that is happening straight up as compared to maybe Lentor Hills, Hill Lock, Lentor Mansion, Lentoria, which are all very close by, maybe few months apart from each other. So that's why there is actually a clear runway for Lentor Modern's owners to benefit in that sense. So 2 years later, Lentor Gardens is going to be the first launch in the second wave. Due to the 4-year SSD, it separated this entire resale demand. So while Lentor Garden Residences owners are not able to exit yet, but these 2 years will benefit owners here because 2 years will be more or less quite sufficient for most of the units here, especially for the bigger units to clear. So essentially what I'm trying to say over here is your real competition, to me, when I see it as a whole based on the future supply of the 1, 2, 3 GLS, right? Your real competition as compared to the phase 1 launches in Lentor is actually the Guaco Land one, which will be launching in about March 2027. So they will bring a total of about 500 plus units, if I'm not wrong, into the entire Lentor area. But yours is 400, so 1,000 units as compared to over here 3,000 units in the resale market, I believe that you will stand to benefit more lah. So when there is lesser competition, it also mean that it'll be easier for you to exit in the future. And at the same time, in terms of exit price, usually when there is not so many units competing, then this is also where we will be able to sell easily. And most probably when your layout is good, future buyers like your unit, and this is where you'll be able to sell at a better price. So which are the unit types that I actually prefer more? You do want to stay tuned, watch till the end of my video where I'll do a layout comparison for you, just to make sure that you can actually stand out in the entire Lentor area as well if you actually plan to sell in the future. So if you know me, you will know that we are not just talking about project. I also like to dive into details. And this is where I broke it down based on the individual unit types. And over here, you see that ranging from 1 to 5 bedrooms, there are actually quite a number of units. But in the Lentor area, if you focus on which are the bulk of the units that will be coming up, it will be the 2 bedrooms, which form about 40+% in the entire Lentor area. So today, if you're buying into a 2 bedroom here, this is where you need to pay extra attention to your exit timing, especially if you already own a Lentor unit. If you're planning on getting something in Lentor Garden, then most importantly is actually your entry price, right? So more importantly, if you're talking about this, you as a buyer, next thing you have to ask yourself is what is the price point that you should look at if you're looking at Lentor Garden? And more importantly, if you get a good entry price, get a good layout, then this is where you can consider this project. So without further ado, if you enjoy my content so far, would you take a moment to like and subscribe to my channel? Also, if you have nobody to view the show flat review, contact me over here and I'll be happy to show you which are the unit types that I prefer in the show flat as well. So without further ado, let's go to our next thing that we are going to talk about, which is what is actually the price to expect in the Lentor area. Because for this project, it is the 7th launch in Lentor area. This is first thing. But the next most important thing that we have to think about is this is actually by Kingsford. And if you're very familiar with the Lentor area, you will know that actually this area is monopolized mostly by Guaco Land. So in terms of Guaco Land, we already can see that their pricing strategy is very different from how Kingsford is. Guaco Land, based on the past few launches like Lentor Central, Lentor Mansion, right? They actually did very well during the first day of launch. And based on the price increment itself, you will notice that developer didn't actually increase the prices too much. Even up to the last day of launch before Lentor Mansion was sold out, the price increment is actually not much. For Kingsford to actually launch a project like this, it is a unique project because this is the only developer so far, Kingsford, which is entering into the Lentor area. So what to expect? Because honestly, it can only go two ways. First is Kingsford launch high. That means like they want to profit more. Then they actually, from day one, they want to profit a lot. The second scenario is if they launch at a safe price because they understand that Guaco Land, they are going to launch units ready. If let's say they sell too high, then Guaco Land might affect the units that they are able to sell. So which one are they most likely going to do, right? To price their units? This is something that we want to talk about now. So before that, let us understand, right, based on the past few launches, what has been happening. So if we categorize all the projects to projects that have done so well, they have achieved a good number of percentage sold during the first day versus those that took longer time to sell, right? It is very clear. So projects that have done well, such as Lentor Modern, Lentor Mansion, their launch days sold 84 and 75% each. And because they did so well, and because Guaco Land doesn't have the habit to actually increase price by too much, right? That's why you can see that first day of launch, minimum price 1,008 or 2,001. Highest maximum price transacted was about 24 to 25 per square foot. Spread was actually $100 and $600 per square foot individually. Then we also look at Lentor Central, right? It should be here at the well sold at launch one. It actually did very well, also 94%. Also because it's Guaco Land, you'll see that the last project actually did not increase price much at all. Spread was about 19 to 25. Spread is lower, much lower than those that actually took time to sell. But for those projects that are actually not by Guaco Land mainly, such as Hillock Green and Lentoria, right? They took a much longer time to sell, mainly because of how the project looks like and stuff like that, but also because them not being from Guaco. That's why you can see during launch day, they also didn't perform so well, 27%, 8%. And this is also back to what I say when project launch, timing actually matters because these projects were actually one after another after the next launch. So any buyer who comes in the Lentor area, they keep thinking that they want to wait for next project to launch first before they decide. So that is why when it is happening like this, the projects actually had a longer time to sell, to go from phase 1, phase 2 to phase 3. That's why you see that the spread compared to here is actually much higher as compared to those projects that did very well. So now the next question is, how does this relate to Lentor Garden, right? Lentor Garden is actually by Kingsford, which, like what we see over here, it is a developer that is unlike the developers that have been monopolizing this area lah. So in this sense, we also want to know, how is this developer going to price the units? Because right now we have another thing to consider. Lentor Garden, Kingsford, is definitely going to take into account the prices of how Lentor Central, which is by Guaco Land, how much they most likely will want to price their units, which goes to our next most important part, right? Because we are going to look at, in terms of land prices, how they are going to do. So if we look at Lentor Modern, Lentor Hill Residences, and also Lentor Central Residences over here, these are the launches that did very well. So land prices, they actually did like 1,002. Don't say Lentor Modern lah, because it is actually an integrated development ma. But if you look at Lentor Hills, if you look at Lentor Mansion, Lentor Central, they actually had a land price of close to about 1,000-ish per square foot per plot ratio. And that is why when they launched, they were at 1,008 to 1,900 plus per square foot. And actually, because of this, their highest transacted per square foot was actually 2,004 to 2,500 per square foot. So now the next question is, if let's say Lentor Garden were to launch based on the land price of a much lower land price as compared to the last few harmonized projects, how much would they launch? Because securing the land at a lower land cost does not necessarily mean that they will launch low, right? Put yourself in the shoes of the developer. You got something cheaper, but market is selling at, let's say, much higher. Would you sell much lower just because you got the land cheaper? Not necessarily so ma. Then the next thing is, the next competitor, Guaco Land, their land price is 1,200 plus per square foot. And in my last few videos, I actually help you to do a rough estimation of how much 7.8 per square foot per plot ratio actually works out in terms of their estimated launch price. So not necessarily they will start at 2,008, but the highest price that they will expect to sell will most likely be 2,800 to 3,000. So now it goes back to this, right? If Kingsford knows about this price, then most likely they will launch at this price. How much would they want to sell? Would they actually sell at 2,004, 2,005? No ma, because we look at the past few launches here, they have all been sold already, which means that previous launches, competitors no more. The real competitor is here. So with this being said, it also means that Kingsford can choose to be either conservative at the start, just so to understand the market and then be very greedy at the end, or they can adopt two different pricing strategy during the first day of launch. So what are they going to do? We are going to study based on their past projects, how do they actually price their units? Because by understanding this, you will also know roughly how is Kingsford going to do in the first day of launch. So the first project that we're going to talk about is Chuan Park. This is located in the Lawrence Chuan area. And during the first day of launch, everybody was so excited about this launch. In fact, during the first day, it actually sold more than 70% or 80% during the first day. So for this project, developers actually during launch day increased 5% based on the individual unit type. And in fact, if we measure based on the developer Kingsford, their habit is always they do not want to sell everything during launch day as compared to Guaco Land who wants to sell out everything. They are not like that. So how do they do it? By not selling everything is they increase price during launch day. That means those people with good queue numbers, they actually able to get something that are much lower in terms of entry price. And those that got a later queue number actually secure units at a much higher price per se. Because of this pricing strategy where they increase price during the first day, this is where they can intentionally hold back some of the units. And during the start of the day, they start lower price just to build momentum first, just to make sure that buyers are attracted to buy. Then subsequently, when they see that there's healthy volume, like healthy demand, buyers want to lock in prices like this, then they increase prices in tranches until the units sell out. So in fact, we look at Chuan Park here based on the number of units sold, right? By the time they reach the last 20 to 30%, they keep announcing that their prices increase already. So back to this, will Kingsford actually launch cheap or launch expensive? I feel that they always have a choice, especially right now they are backed by Guaco Land's GLS, achieving an all-time high record in terms of land prices and expected to launch higher. They will most likely adopt the strategy of probably pricing their units. Those buyers who got a good queue number, they probably will be able to enjoy a lower entry price as compared to those that secure much later. And why I actually want to share with you this is because based on what they have done before, you also can plan for yourself. If let's say you got a good queue number or a really bad queue number, you can also make a educated prediction on what they will do here based on their previous track record. But of course, if you're not so sure on how to navigate this, you do want to reach me at my contact number at 62727, and I'm happy to chat with you more regarding this. So the last but not least, we are going to talk about this, which is rental yield. So there have been quite a few buyers that are entering into the Lentor area and actually expecting to hold on to unit for a short-term period. But because right now there is SSD in place, so there will be some buyers like you who probably need to consider to rent out first. Or maybe there is actually some of you who prefer to buy this as a form of rental investment only. So the real question here is asking yourself, and this actually can be applicable to any projects that you're entering. So based on that area that you're considering, is the area that you're considering a rentability problem or is it a rental yield problem? Because quite honestly, even if you're talking about the entire Singapore area, there is actually no rentability area. Much rather, it's more about how much rent are you going to charge your tenants, isn't it? Because if you charge cheap, then of course there will be tenants renting ma. But often than not, most people have vacant units, cannot rent out is because their pricing is too high. Especially in an area like Lentor area, right? I will feel that this is not a property that is positioned for rental basis. It's not like an area that you come here, you want very good rental yield lah, but it is more towards profitability. And you also want to ask yourself next, if you are somebody who really wants rental yield as compared to profits because this is mainly your rental property, then is it something worth looking at or not? Which is why we go to the next few case studies to share with you this. So I'm going to use two particular projects, 4 projects, 2 case studies to compare with you in terms of rental yield, in terms of profitability, which is actually more important. Because when you're looking at rental yield, it might not do well in profits, and vice versa, right? If you're looking at profits, you might not do very well in rental yield, which is very clear in actually areas such as the OCR area like Lentor area. So first, we are going to take a look at these 2 projects. They are actually 2 similar unit types. One is at Foret at Bukit Timah, located at Beauty World area, and one is at Iveria, which is in the CCR area. So based on these 2 units, they are purchased at around the same date, sold at around the same period of time. So one thing we want to focus on is actually the entry price, because you do see that their entry price is more or less quite similar. Now, during the time when they sold, which is in 2025, although their purchase price is actually quite similar, but their exit price is very different. Particularly for it at Bukit Timah, their sale price was actually 2.48 million, making their profit to be $300,000, annualized returns about close to 3.9%. Whereas Iveria did not manage to achieve such a high selling price, 2.388 million, profits only at $132,000 at 1.66%. But however, in comparison to rental, Iveria was able to command a much higher rental yield of 3.24% as compared to Foret. So over here, we see that very clear. If today you are coming into an area to focus on profitability, then you have to pick units that can help you to make profits like this and not focus too much on rental. Because for rental, why we don't want to focus too much in today's terms is because we have to factor in things like property tax, MCSC fees, and these are things that actually eat up a lot on your individual monthly rental as well. If you're not so sure how to calculate this, I think I will attach my previous video just to give quick reference on how to calculate, just to make sure you make a sound investment decision. Similarly, we're going to go to another project, same thing, Affinity at Serangoon versus Uptown at Farrell. So quite clearly, when we look at this, it's very clear that which one will have better rental yield, which is the one at Farrell lah, because nearer to the city fringe area. But in terms of profits, you can see that Affinity at Serangoon, $366,000. This is despite it being in an area that is not near MRT, but still has much better profits. Whereas this Uptown at Farrell, even though entry price is quite similar to Affinity at Serangoon, when they are selling in 2026, profits is actually much lesser. So even though they enjoy a higher rental yield as compared to Affinity at Serangoon, but in terms of rental yield is much higher. So today, which one should you consider first? Should you consider profitability or should you consider rental yield in Lentor? Quite frankly, based on these 2 case studies, quite clearly, this area is more for profits and not for rental yield lah. So it's very important for you to know how to select units or much rather properties or much rather layouts that can help you to stand out, so that in terms of exit in the future, there will be strong buyer demand for your unit type. So if you are not so sure how to navigate this, you can contact me here via my contact number 8126-2727. If not, we also want to take a look at the project itself. So which are the unit types of my choice as well. So over here, you can see that based on Lentor Garden, there is total of 499 units. As compared to the rest that have launched before that, there will be some here that is bound to be still available when you sell in the future. So most importantly, when you want to compare with your competitors, before this, you want to make sure that you choose the right layout. So which is my choice unit types? We are going to go through the project first. Okay, so for Lentor Garden Residences, this project is actually unique because It is a plot that faces the Hillock Park. So for those of you who actually prefer greenery, you might want to shortlist units like this that are facing towards the park area. Let us look in terms of site plan. So this is actually a full facilities condo, got tennis court over here. The ones that are over here are actually the shorter block, which highest floor is actually the 8 floors. So over here, more condensed are the 3-bedroom premium units. Then the higher floor towers are actually 16 floors, a total of 3 blocks over here. So they have a range of 2 bedrooms, 3 bedrooms, and also 4 bedrooms. So you do want to take note over here that generally the units here do face park. There is also strata houses here, which I will not be touching on because there are only 3 units. In terms of unit distribution, it's quite common for developers to want to build more 2 bedrooms here, but this developer is focusing a lot on the 2 bedroom plus study. Something that you want to be careful about because the 2 bedroom plus study over here is actually 732 square feet, which in comparison to the rest that have been launched before, it actually belongs to a much bigger size. In fact, for comparison, Lentor mentions 3 bedrooms, smallest is actually 786 square feet, which is very close to the square feet of the 2 bedrooms over here. Okay, so we are going to touch on the first 2-bedroom analysis. There is actually 2 main layouts, which is the 646 square feet and the 678 square feet. The difference between 2 of these layouts is actually the kitchen area. So one is actually a kitchenette along the galley area and one is actually an enclosed kitchen. But you do want to take note for 2 bedrooms here, all of the bathroom and the kitchen does not come with their window. So layout is actually quite straightforward. But I think more importantly, you want to compare this layout to the rest of the Lentor estate. How is it going to perform in the resale market as well? Based on Lentor Garden 646 square feet layout, this is actually the smallest 2 bedrooms across the entire Lentor area. In fact, if I put in like the similar floor plans such as Hillock Green, such as Lentor Mansion, such as Lentoria, right? Open concept kitchen in this area is actually quite common. So it's not something that you need to avoid, but much rather for Lentor Garden because it is built smaller. Let's say if developers were to launch at about 2,000 per square foot, entry price only slightly less than $1.3 million. If based on 2,001 per square foot, it will be slightly shy of the $1.4 million mark. I also took the effort to actually put in the transacted price which have happened. So if Lentor Garden is able to launch at around that per square foot of 2,000 to 2,200 per square foot, it will still fall under the range that is much lower than what has been transacted before, which is a benefit for you because in the entire Lentor area, like what I mentioned, there's going to be a lot of supply. Almost 40% is mostly 2 bedrooms. And if you look at how to market the 2 bedrooms in the recent TOP projects, actually people have struggle selling. I just sold one in Tembusu and it took a while for me to sell also. But that's why entry price is definitely one of the most important. And all thanks to harmonization, now aircon latch not counted. So that's why you can benefit. And even though developer probably going to charge you higher per square foot, but because of the smaller size, overall quantum is going to be lower. So I would say that this layout is not something that you should shun upon as well. So next one we want to look at is 678 square feet in comparison to the rest of the 2 bedrooms in the Lentor estate that has enclosed kitchen. So honestly, based on floor plan, not much difference because Lentor Central, Lentor Modern, Lentor Hills. Lentor Modern don't say lah because already become resale market. But based on Lentor Central and Lentor Hills, nothing much to complain about in terms of floor plan. And based on whatever that has been transacted here, if based on 2,001 per square foot is about 1.42 million starting from, which is a price that has already been done in the entire Lentor area. Okay, so the next layout that we're going to talk about is actually the 2 bedroom plus study, which is a 732 square feet layout. Developers actually built so many of the units that is the 2 plus study. In terms of entry price, based on 2,001 per square foot, it starts from 1.53 million. So this is something for you to actually think about. You probably have a lot of choices because layout quite similar. They have semi-enclosed kitchen. The study is either they are longer or they are shorter. So because of the length of this video, I will not touch on more, but if you have questions on which one you should look at first, you can contact me via my contact number. So next one we are going to talk about is actually the 3-bedroom layout. The first one that the Lentor Garden has, which is the smallest tree, is actually 872 square feet. And then I actually plonked the next layout, which is the 936 square feet layout. So the difference between these 2 floor plans is actually the study area over here. The 872 layout, quite honestly, if I compare to the other units, the 3-bedroom compact in this area, based on entry price of maybe 2,000 per square foot to 2,001 per square foot, even though based on Lentor Garden, this kitchen window is very small, kitchen definitely going to be darker as compared to the rest. But in terms of entry price starting from 1.8 million is something that cannot find really. Like 936 square feet also, starting price at 1.965. These are the unit types that during first year of launch, buyers will step up quickly. I actually wish that the developers actually build more of these unit types because under 2 million, it actually is what most buyers in the market currently are finding or looking at. They find it attractive in terms of price point to enter lah. So now you can compare the 3-bedroom compact to the rest in the Lentor estate. For Lentor Central, of course, they have one of the best layouts, but sold out already. For Hillock Green, because it is a non-harmonized project, they have the longer alleys. Same thing for Lentoria. All of these sold out already. Entry price 1.8 to 2.26 million. So today, based on Lentor Gardens 3-bedroom compact, if you are able to enter something at under $2 million, it would still be very similar to what has been done before, accepted before in the entire Lentor area. Same thing goes for the others as well in comparison. Transacted price 1.8 all the way up to 2.1, $2.2 million. So if today you can get something at $2 million, $2.1 million, it is actually very much similar to the price point of what has happened 2 years ago. So next we are going to go to the 969 square feet layout. So this layout is a bit sad because for this 3-bedroom plus study, there is no window in the kitchen and in the bathrooms. So not something that I will prefer honestly, because in terms of exit in the future, buyers are going to look at this, especially in an area where most of the 3-bedrooms in this area have windows, right? I show you what are the similar units for the 3-bedroom based on similar size. So if you're buying something, a 3-bedroom plus study here, it will not be my top choice due to the lack of windows that probably most of the HDB upgraders will prefer. Yes, developers actually in addition give you an extra study here that can act as an additional maid's room per se, but no windows in the entire house is something that might have resistance to sell in the future. That's why if you have the budget, I would think that it will be better for you to top up that extra $60,000 to $70,000 more to go for the 3-bedroom premium. Smallest is 1001 square feet because based on 3-bedroom premium, there is actually a proper yard area, there's actually a proper storeroom, and you got windows in the bathroom, you got extra WC over here. This is the type of layout that most buyers in the OCR area will choose anytime, which is good also because in the 3-bedroom premium, there are actually quite a few layouts to choose from. The only difference is actually the foyer area, whether it's longer or it is shorter only. Okay, so if you have problem choosing which is the kind of 3-bedroom premium you should go for in terms of price point, whether you should go for a better view or a lousier view, which facing to go for, a longer foyer, shorter foyer, smaller better or bigger better, reach me here and my contact number and we can chat more as well. So last floor plan analysis we are going to talk about is the 4 bedrooms. So 4 bedrooms in the entire Lentor area actually do very well. The first one we're going to talk about is actually the smallest unit type, which is the 1184 square feet. So for these 4 bedrooms, based on this size, when we look at the last few launches, I also realized that this size is usually the most sought after, because last time, based on the entire Lentor area, due to most of the projects there being non-harmonized, that's why for 4-bedroom, usually developers build very big, and that's why entry price, overall quantum is much higher. That's why for 4 bedrooms, this is actually the best unit type to go for, 1184 square feet, even though it doesn't have a wide frontage living area, but it still ticks the box and necessities of what most HDB upgraders, or much rather own-stay buyers in the OCR area want. In fact, if I look at the master bedroom here, it's actually quite nice. They still provide a walk-in wardrobe over here, which also means that instead of wardrobe here, wardrobe is here, you have more space here, and the missus can actually put in a dressing table here as well. So functionality, very important. So I would think that this layout will be something very attractive that many buyers will go for as well. Then we're moving on to the bigger 4-bedroom comparison, which is the 1356 and 1346 square feet layout respectively. These layout are very nice because nowadays developers no longer build the wide frontage living room only. They make sure that you have wide frontage and you have enough space for dining area. Because for a wide frontage living area, last time how developers do is they will actually put the dining table behind the sofa . So for a big unit type to have a living space to be grand, the entire frontage need to be very wide, which in a lot of cases, especially in today's context, developers may not be able to do so. So this is actually the newer, I would say, improvised version of a good layout whereby there is enough space for dining table and enough distance from TV to the sofa area. So this layout as compared to the rest has also a junior master bedroom, which is actually quite rare because if you look at the entire Lentor area, not all 4 bedrooms actually comes with this. So for this comparative analysis in the Lentor estate, especially categorize the better 4-bedroom layouts with the not so good 4-bedroom layouts. So over here you see that the Lentor Garden Residences actually is categorized with Lentor Central and Lentor Hill Residences. In fact, Lentor Central and Lentor Hill Residences still remains as my most favorite layout in the entire Lentor estate. But of course, based on today's point of filming, no more already. If you want, you have to buy from resale. If not, the next best choice is actually Lentor Garden Residences . Lentor Garden Residences 1346 square feet. It is still much better than what is going to compare over here, such as maybe Lentor Mansion, Lentoria. Their layout not as nice, but their transaction price all has already crossed highest $3.4 million. So going back to Lentor Garden Residences, if developers were to price it at about 2,100 per square foot, is $2,826 million, which is a bit low lah. Quite highly, they will not price it like that. Based on 2,300 per square foot, it is $3.096 million, which in comparison, when we look at what has been done deal over here, everything is still within the price range of what has been expected in the entire Lentor estate. So even though layout not the best, but it's also not lousy due to harmonization. So this is why this layout, I feel, will still be quite highly sought after. But if you were to ask me, the 1184 square feet is actually the most attractive in the entire estate. So in short, I've covered all the different floor plan analyses from the 2 bedrooms all the way to 4 bedrooms. And quite honestly, why I feel that it's important for me to share with you this is because you do want to know who are the competition that is coming up. There will bound to still be units that will be competing with you when you want to sell in the future. Maybe not as much, but there will still be, especially for the smaller unit types. In particularly, that's why I feel that it's important for you to know what is the price point for you to enter in, because what I mentioned, developers, Kingsford actually has the habit of actually pricing their units in the beginning at the lowest price, but the back at the highest price. In fact, based on the future land plot of what Guaco Land is most likely going to sell based on the highest spread of 2,100 per square foot, they are most likely going to launch units at the latest phase at a much higher price. So because of that, that is why unit selection is also important. It also depends on your queue number as well. If you're not so sure how to actually navigate along this, you can reach me at my contact number here, and we can actually chat more as to which are the unit types you should focus on, what should be your exit timing, how should you think about in terms of your own investment process. My number is right here. Otherwise, I'll see you in my next video.